powered by Reviting, streaming from the Reviting Digital Studio. It's the David Daily. Exploring frontier technology, artificial intelligence, quantum innovation, and the intersection of faith, funding, and the future. Here's your host, David Goki.
Welcome to another episode of the David Daily. I'm incredibly excited today. We have a special guest today on the Funding, Faith, and Future segment of the David Daily Show. We are a LinkedIn live stream, a podcast, and a talk show going live occasionally and regularly and as daily as much as we can. If you're tuning in for the first time today, thank you for being a loyal follower and someone who's always tuning in. Please smash that like button. Let us know where you are tuning in from today. And if this is your first time, go ahead and listen. We have a very active audience on LinkedIn and of course across YouTube and every major platform. So if you're interested in going live or you've always wanted to create content yourself, I would recommend you reach out to us behind the scenes and talk to the Reviting Studio team. We produce over 10 shows every week, and we are building a live streaming network so that we can bring thought leaders and experts and specialty people to educate, entertain, and elevate you. And so without further ado, I'm very excited about our guest today. Graeme Barlow is the CEO of a company. He has personally funded over $500K in his own personal fundings. He also is building his own company for 8-figure entrepreneurs. He's big stuff, and also building an organization called Founders Link, which is goal is to raise over 1,000 individuals to become million-dollar business people. And this aligns with our organization at 111X. Graeme, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you, David. Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. So tell us just a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the audience. Maybe some people have mutual connections with you or know you, or maybe they don't. And you're also live streaming as well. So just give us a brief intro on who you are and who you serve, and a little bit about what you're really passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been an entrepreneur quite literally my entire life. I got started in the earliest days of digital currency, back in gaming currencies in the early 2000s, games like Diablo 1, Diablo 2, and ended up kind of building a company around that. After exiting that company in 2006, built a game development company at the height of the Facebook gaming era, went through the whole venture funding ecosystem for that process, from pre-seed to seed to A, and then kind of saw an exit from that company. We ended up co-founding a SaaS company in the pet industry, and for the last 10 years have been helping build Iversoft, which is one of the leading custom software development teams in Canada. Started doing projects. Now we build high caliber teams for some of the biggest companies in the world. And over the last 2 years have been building a community of founders called FounderLink, creating the ecosystem that I kind of wish I had when I was coming up through early founding days, and feeling how lonely and isolating the journey can be, and recognizing that there are incredible communities out there, but they're usually paid and gated behind huge price tags. And so FounderLink was kind of our way of giving back to the community to create a free ecosystem for founders to connect. We host dinners, we host events, and a ton of weekly content to support people on the journey. But throughout all of that, I've been fairly active as an advisor, as a board member, as an investor across multiple ecosystems, multiple industries. I have experience scaling SaaS companies, services companies, and product companies up to 8 figures. And today get to spend a lot of my time supporting, serving, growing the team at Iversoft, building our community, and coaching and working with founders, which is pretty cool. And you'll see in the background, I've also been an obsessive collector and fan of everything cardboard and cards and that ecosystem since I was about 8 years old. So that's kind of my world. I think you're muted, David.
We're going to get right into it. I'm excited because you're actually based in Vancouver, BC on the West Coast. And I, for a long time, lived in the Seattle area, primarily in Bellevue. and worked for a
Nice.
small little startup over in Redmond, Washington. You may have heard it, Microsoft. It's a little,
I think I've heard of that one.
yeah, it's just a small one. But I left Microsoft, and but I never left the Pacific Northwest in my heart. I love the outdoors. And I also see too that in addition to that, you have a lot of mutual experience. So we're going to get right into it. So the first topic is about funding. So how do angels specifically evaluate founder fundraising? So first of all, let's just start from the ground up, the basics. What is an angel in your mind? What qualifies as an angel? And then putting your angel hat on, or maybe your angel halo on, how do you evaluate a startup?
Yeah. So at a very basic level, angels are typically accredited investors, those who meet the required criteria in the Canada or the US to be able to write checks into emerging companies that can be in multiple different sectors or industries. I think there's usually a fair bit of preconception about like the check sizes required to be angels or the amount of capital required to get into angel investing. I think one of the things that people also don't necessarily recognize in the angel ecosystem is just how risky it is and how much of a game of numbers it is, right? Like there's a lot of people I think that hear about angel investing, like, oh, I write a check into a company and it becomes Facebook and I have a billion dollars. And like the reality is the venture, if you look at venture funds, the best funds in the world that do this professionally all the time have kind of a 1 or 2 in 10 hit rate. And yet you see a lot of angels that write one check and expect that that's going to kind of go to the moon. And so angels typically invest within their kind of core discipline or philosophy and help early stage companies get off the ground. They are foundationally kind of the bedrock of the startup ecosystem. They're the biggest lever for pre-seed and seed investing for the most part. And often the first ones outside of kind of friends and family to believe in and identify early founders on their journey to building a company.
I absolutely love this. And full transparency, I am not an angel or an accredited investor or a financial advisor. I do have a good legal team and a good set of advisors around myself. But fully transparently and authentically, I do aspire to be a wealthy angel someday. And from a generosity and giving perspective, yeah, absolutely. Very generous, just as in terms of a generous spirit. Now, angels want a return on their money, but I always position it like this. If you don't have your angel money to put on black in Vegas, then don't put your money down on a startup because, boomer bust startups, like you said, 8 or 9 startups will fail in the first 5 years. So it really does need to be something, A, that the angel believes in, but also more of a dispendable income or dispendable cash. If you have some cash at the end of the year sitting there and you have a startup you really believe in, then an angel would make sense. Now, how accurate is that? I've been telling people that. I just want to make sure I'm on the right page here. I'm not like misleading people. I'm being very open and direct. Is that the right way to
Yeah,
think about angel funding?
absolutely. So one of the big things I would say is if you're getting into the angel space, the day you write the check, mentally write that money to zero, right? Like you have to assume when you put money into an early stage company, it's gone. And I actually feel like one of the most challenging and somewhat toxic things in the startup and tech ecosystem are the angels that don't necessarily understand that philosophy, that write a check into a speculative early stage company and then call that founder every 2 weeks and say, like, what's going on? What are the new updates? When's the exit? Where's the revenue? And so I think if you're going to get into the angel space, understand that you're betting on the person, understand that the timelines, like typically, I think the average is like 8 to 10 years for a liquidity event for these companies. So like, this is not a fast turnaround. This is something that you're in for the long term and the odds are not in your favor. So if you can mentally write the check to zero, or write the amount to zero, and then support the founder throughout the journey, support the company with advice, network connections you can. There's a lot you can do to try and support, but there's also a lot that early stage investors can do to detract and create challenges for companies that get involved in. So I think your Vegas philosophy is accurate,
Right.
but I think the all on black is better odds in startups. So kind of like,
Yeah, at least
yeah.
you're getting 48 point whatever 5%, the 3% of the house. But yeah, the first philosophy of funding for angels is it's just a wash, right? Act as if it's no capital. Second of all, expect a return of 8 to 10 years on average for a liquidity event, right? And then finally, evaluating which startup and how active to be involved. Now, I heard you say some angels are silent investors, meaning they give you their money and then they get it later, or they're quite active. So, how do you typically see the role of an early stage angel playing in a startup that leads to the best outcome for all parties involved?
Ooh, I like that question. So a lot of ways to answer this, and I think a lot of it comes down to the specific expertise that the individual brings to the table, as well as the stage of the company and the expertise of the founder. So, like, there are a lot of ways people can help with a company, especially with connections, introductions, access to customers, or if they're fundraising, access to other angels or network or ecosystem that can help write checks. That's probably the biggest one. Where I've seen a wild mix of high impact and problematic is when early stage investors get too involved in the operational execution of the company or the finances of the company. Often done with the best intentions, not always done in the most useful way for the founder or for the kind of risk profile that the company needs to take on. And this is especially true that I've seen from angels coming into, say, the tech ecosystem that haven't necessarily been tech founders themselves, right? There's a very different mindset and philosophy coming into how to run those companies and how to build. And there's a time in a company's scaling and life cycle to be conservative and to be hyper cash aware and to really, really focus on path to profitability. And in venture backed companies, there's a time to grow aggressively and focus on user adoption and trying to find product market fit. And I think a lot of that is nuance and feel for the founder and the stage of the company. And I think one of the most challenging things I've seen founders experience is they'll have, say, 10 angels in a seed round and 10 divergent opinions, all
Right,
being shuttered at degrees of volume at them.
right,
And that can be a very challenging thing to
right.
navigate as a founder early on.
Yeah. What a great perspective. By the way, you're doing really awesome. I'm glad that you're so knowledgeable in this space. And you're exactly right. It's like they say it's herding cats and dogs. I'm not sure if where that even came from. And I've not herded very many cats or dogs in my life. But if you can imagine, your friends and family are going to be high maintenance in the beginning. They're going to want to, that Thanksgiving dinner, that Christmas dinner might be interesting conversation. Hey, how's the business going? How are your operating, expenses and all that? Where is my money going? I see you doing all these things. But then secondly, as you start to introduce wealthy individuals and these angels, they also are going to be sometimes very high touch, needing that white glove service, right? And needing that hand holding, needing that investor relational type of an activity where, these are not, big venture funds. These are not, in our second topic, we're going to get to that. But, in this early stage, angels are evaluating these companies. And so, the best angel, what I'm hearing you say is maybe they have a couple friends who can bring some additional capital when needed. And secondly, they may be a little bit more silent than super actively involved, but they're going to be evaluating a startup. So for the angels who are watching now, if we just kind of put our angel cap on and you're evaluating a startup, for all the angels listening, all of the investors who are considering a startup, what are a couple of the key things that you really want to think about, in addition to team and product market fit and viability and timing? What are some of those key things that, you're saying maybe you're putting in 100K or 250K into a business as an angel? What are some of those early things that you're like, what, I think that this particular startup or business is going to be, a winner?
I love it. So a couple things I want to comment on there, because I think one comment you made that kind of putting in 100 to 200 to 300K, like I think angel checks have a massive range, and I do think there's absolutely a stigma philosophy out there that angel checks need to be large. There can be, especially for younger, growing founders or company owners or execs, like you can get into the angel ecosystem with smaller checks, helping earlier stage companies, even in the kind of 5 to 10K side of things, if you also bring value in network or market insight and things like that. So like you don't necessarily want to see that the barrier is so high, especially if you're getting in early. There's a lot you can learn by making smaller bets early on, so you can do a higher volume and learning how to identify companies. Now, the
I love that, by the
for
way. I
me,
absolutely love that because no, I was thinking the same thing as I was saying 100 and 200K. I'm like, actually, the angels I've talked to, most of them, it's like a quarter or a dime that they're putting into a startup.
yeah,
And yeah, your volume goes up. You diversify your risk, especially for risk adverse angels, which most angels are more risk adverse.
yep.
But yeah, when you're thinking about how many angels to have or how much you actually need, yeah, having a really good use of funds strategy is important. And I think you
Oh,
were
yeah.
going on to maybe continuing with that angel hat, because we could put the founder hat on all day long. But as the angel,
Yeah.
how do you know, okay, this startup feels like I've got the right leverage point, right? I'm going to be highly leveraged. I'm early stage. What is one of those things you're like, yeah, this is a startup that I've got to get in early?
Yeah. So a couple, maybe, I don't know about controversial, but like maybe polarizing views here. Especially at the pre-seed and early stage, it's going to be a little bit less about the product and the idea, because the reality is that's likely going to pivot half a dozen or a dozen times before it actually gets to meaningful scale. By the time the product hits market and hits customers, there's going to be a lot to learn and adjust on. So less about trying to find the perfect product. I think the level of development in the product is changing with AI right now, and the speed at which you can build prototypes and launch products. So we're seeing a higher bar for what stage ideas need to be at. I don't think it is any. I mean, one of my first companies that I raised money in, we literally raised off a pitch deck, and we did not have anything built yet, because you couldn't build anything at that scale at the time without meaningful capital. Today, I think you can get pretty close to a fully operational MVP or early stage prototype with very, very little capital with what AI allows. Doesn't necessarily mean you've got infrastructure for scale, but you can get a lot further. One of the things that I know founders find frustrating, but for me is always a good litmus test, is how successful has the founder or the founding team been at getting in front of investors? How capable are they of solving the most basic problem? Because at the end of the day, fundraising is network and storytelling. And those are going to be two of the most essential skills, full stop, period, across the growth of the company, to attract customers, to attract top talent, um, and to attract capital. And so when I meet founders from different regions, I talk to a lot of Canadian founders, and they are talking about the struggle of fundraising or how hard it is to meet people. We are living in a time where it has never been easier to build those connections, to make those introductions, to get in front of people, whether it's on X, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it is take a train, plane, car, whatever. If there aren't good angel communities in your city, region, whatever, you know where they are in the world. Silicon Valley is still the heart of that. Um, most of the major cities across the US, most of the major cities in Canada have thriving ecosystems for this. So for me, one of the big early indicators is, do you understand how to hustle and get your story in front of people? And if you're sitting there, they're like, oh, we've been fundraising for months and nobody wants to talk to me. I can't get in front of anyone. Like that's an easy indication they don't have what it takes yet. They have not yet become the person they need to be to become successful. And if they're like, oh, I'm the technical founder, I don't know how to tell a story, it's like, cool. that's fine. You need to be inspiring enough about your conviction that you can attract a co-founder that knows how to tell this story. So that for me is one of the biggest tells that is I recognize is frustrating for founders. So it's like, well, if I already had the network, I would already have money. It's like, if you can't solve for network, I think you're going to be struggling long term. And so seeing someone that's able to rally people around them, that's able to get hype and momentum and excitement, or is showing early signs of that, and the resilience to overcome those early problems, and that kind of like, I don't know how to solve this, but here's what I'm going to go do about it. That's a big one. Second one is most people underestimate how hard fundraising is and the volume of effort it takes, especially if you're a first-time founder without a huge track record. When I work with pre-seed founders and we talk about fundraising, we are typically talking about an all-in effort for fundraising for 2 to 3 months, and you're going to target hundreds of pitches. And when I meet people that are months into their journey and they're like, we've pitched 15 times. It's like, cool. Was that Monday? Because like, you got to do real volume to get better at pitching, to get better at storytelling, to build your network, and to find the people that actually resonate with what you're selling. And so I think, yeah, network and volume are the biggest for me, early indicators of whether or not they've got what it takes to persevere.
Yeah. I love that. So good. If you've only done 15 pitches, or if you're an angel and you've only looked at 15 pitches, then you're eating lunch on Monday, right? You're a humorous guy. I love it. And so I'm hearing storytelling and grit.
Absolutely.
And storytelling. So as an angel, how do you identify that an individual has grit? And how long does that typically take to, make a good evaluation that I know this person, this human, or this team really has exactly what it takes to not only weather this storm, but more storms that will come in the future with grit?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things that I like to talk to and then understand. And a lot of it comes down to kind of what's the journey that brought them here? Why are they trying to solve the problem in front of them? I know this is, I think, a pretty common theme from like YC, but the industry that they're going into, have they suffered in that industry to the extent where they now understand something unique about that space and they just have to go solve it? Like, that is a phenomenal indicator that like they've lived with the pain, they understand the pain, and they are now like high conviction to go solve the pain, and they're doing the work to find the people to help them make that happen. And something that's been newer in my philosophy and approach in the last probably 1 to 2 years, as I've started working more on the coaching side with founders and you get a little bit more time with them, you get a little bit more kind of behind the scenes insight, is how well do they collect information, and can you watch them kind of update their belief system, update their operating system in real time for how they're acting and what they're doing? How fast can they operationalize new information, test things, and reinvent themselves? And I think that process, so outside of just pure grit, there's nuance there. It's like grit is just like, I'm gonna like dig in and work hard and be determined and just beat my head against the wall until successful. But I think there's something to be said for like the grit that allows self-reflection to be like, okay, I had a thesis, it's wrong, I'm going to adapt, I'm going to change my behavior and go test again with equal fervor and enthusiasm. And I think that ability to reinvent yourself and be self-aware, and anything you can do to demonstrate that early on, shows some of that kind of unbelievable resilience that is going to be necessary to scale as a founder. Because the reality is, the person you are on day one of a company is not the person you need to be to succeed in that company 5 years from now. And so the journey of a founder is often about a lot of personal reinvention and continuously leveling up your own skills to attract better people, to attract better customers, to learn better leadership, to continue to grow. And it's very, very unlikely you have all of those skills on day one. But if you have the character traits and the foundation that allows you to grow and evolve as your company grows, I think that's amazing. And so like I I really like early stage founders when I get to have a good conversation with them first and give a little bit of advice. So like, okay, well, like the stage you're at, I think here are some things that I think you should go do or try. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, you never hear from them again. 1 in 10, they come back 2 weeks and like, I did everything. Here's the results. What's next? Those are the ones that I like paying a lot of attention to.
Right. I love that. Incredible grit and storytelling. I like that aspect of storytelling, especially because every story has like a good hero, a good villain, and a good guide, right? And there's this like heroic like victory, and then there's this like tragic fall, and then there's this like resolution at the end. Shout out to Cassandra Marino, who taught me a lot about storytelling and Broadway, because a good story, especially as a founder, requires that revision. And even 3 to 5 years, to your point, the people who got you here won't get you there, right? And similarly, the version of yourself that got you here will not get you there. So as an angel or an investor, looking into how a founder or a team is reinventing themselves, and also kind of reiterating that feedback loop, especially as the market changes and dynamics, both macro and micro, update along the way, is something that you would be looking for as you're evaluating a funding target.
Can I add one other thing to
Absolutely.
to
No,
the
you're not
evaluation
allowed to
side?
do that. You're not the
Shut
guest
up,
on
out of
this
time.
show. Yeah, of course. Please add. And we'll get to our second
Um,
topic here about faith here in a bit.
yeah, no worries. I think there's so many things to go into this that are just very interesting and important. And I talk a lot as well about the importance of financial literacy amongst founders. And it does not mean that every founder needs an accounting background. I actually think that would be disastrous. But I do think founders fundamentally need to either early on understand or have a plan on how to learn how to understand and get coaching on how to run a basic P&L, how to run a basic forecast in their company, and how to monitor cash flow. And I think those are like foundational principles that a lot of people underestimate when operating their business or when running early on, and they kind of hand it all off to a whole bunch of other people to report back to them. And that's where you can get into a lot of trouble early on. And so I often enjoy picking through financial models early on for companies, not necessarily to understand the accuracy, because like most early stage financials are nonsense. They're up and to the right and everything's going to be wonderful. But there's a lot of insight you can gain into the assumptions that are made in that model, why those assumptions are there. If they say 6 months from now, we're going to add this much revenue, what is that based on? Like what's driving that? What expenses do you incur on the path to that? Where is this belief coming from that you can make this story happen? And it's a lot less about the hard number and more about the thought process that's gone into why the model's built this way and where you're trying to take the company.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate that you added the financial aspect as well. Basic financial understanding, cash flow, balance sheet, and projections. And to your point, not that you just have the documents, but that you also understand the thinking, the process, the strategy, and really how did you even come up with this model and what are
Mhm.
your key assumptions, right? So I
Yeah.
really like that. And yeah, we have a second topic here, Graeme. And also, I just want to, before we get into the second topic, I want to shout out to all of the people joining in. We've got a lot of fans here. Obviously, we've got Jesse. And so if you're tuning in for the first time, please tune in some more. We've got some folks on YouTube showing us some love, saying, bro is trying so hard. Love it. Appreciate you so much. We also have Chris Pittler from my Microsoft days in here as well. Chris, so good to see you tuning in from X. We've got Whiskey Wednesday as well. We've got Tanisha and Layla tuning in, just going through the comments. So if you want your comments to be on screen, just go ahead and put a comment in whatever platform you're on. Go ahead and put those in here. We would love to see that. So anyways, Graeme, it is so great to have you here on the Daily Show. And we're going to get into our second topic, which is all about faith, specifically how to invest with conviction beyond just capital. And the key here is that capital is great, but not all money is the same. What does that actually mean from a faith perspective?
So it's interesting to look at, because I think that means a lot of different things to people in all over the world, right? And for me, I have had different periods of my life where I've had lots of different exposure to multiple variants of faith. And I think one of the things that has always been interesting for me on the founder journey is it is not a smooth, pain free process. Um, there is going to be a lot of up and down. And so when you look at founders, when you look at community, like what is around that person, what helps guide them through hard decisions, what helps guide them through challenging times, what kind of support ecosystem they have to lean on is absolutely massive. For me specifically, looking for people that are highly aligned on values, that are highly aligned on kind of core beliefs, and are looking at building ethical, positive companies. It's so funny. I've had such a journey in my philosophy around impact and kind of how to approach doing good in the world. One of my first companies was a B Corp. We were very focused on trying to use capital
Nice.
to scale up and impact nonprofits. And it's been interesting to me to see the evolution. I have a bit of a controversial take. I think one of the best things you can do to drive positive impact in the world and drive community impact is to run a good business and to run a profitable business. And I don't actually love a lot of the model around nonprofits when it comes to kind of
Right.
core philosophy, because oftentimes those organizations and those groups don't achieve meaningful scale, and therefore you can be the most faithful, awesome human being wanting to make a difference, and your $100 will be appreciated, but isn't necessarily going to do anything. Whereas if you focus on kind of core principles and build meaningful companies, and you can build 8, 9, 10-figure businesses, your ability to impact the world and change causes that you believe in is exponentially more impactful. And so I oftentimes will encourage early stage founders to keep faith or their mission for the future or their core beliefs a core tenet of the values, but don't bring it into the operational business model until they're past 10 million in revenue. And largely because I don't think it helps their long-term cause to distract from the core of grow the business, gain the resources, and then be able to give back in meaningful ways versus try and give back at every possible step along the way when you're building something that fundamentally requires every ounce of energy, fuel, capital, everything to get it off the ground, get it scaling, getting moving in a positive direction. So I recognize that's probably a bit of a different take on it, but like
Yeah.
for me, I love people that have the conviction, but it's balanced with pragmatic reality of how do I make a long-term impact in a 10-year window versus how do I
Right.
make an impact in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I love that. I love the perspective too of saying like faith or whatever faith that you believe in. So maybe we could just start at that foundational level of faith, and maybe more specifically to begin with religion, and maybe it's like
Yeah.
childhood religion that you inherit from your parents, right? We've all been
Yeah.
there. We're young, we get indoctrinated with this religion kind of without our choice because of a cultural and societal expectation to include religion in our life. So just out of curiosity, what
Yeah.
religional foundation did your parents raise you with?
Yeah. So I grew up in the United Church,
Okay.
which I think is kind of like religion light, but was an incredible experience to see the community. Since then, I've had a ton of experience in the Catholic faith. Um, I actually had a deeply faithful co-founder in the Sikh community in our first community. So I spent a ton of time in that ecosystem. Have invested in founders kind of across the spectrum of religion. And honestly, on a personal standpoint, I've been kind of in and out of different belief at different stages in my life. And it's what's been really fascinating to reflect on for myself now. And I've got a young daughter, and kind of looking at what her future looks like is whether you stick to one prescriptive kind of core tenet or philosophy or are kind of open and fluid. I think the belief in something bigger than you and the belief and involvement in community beyond yourself, for me, is the biggest thing I've taken away from every kind of religious community I've been in throughout my life and been exposed to. And I think the best of all of those philosophies bring together people to help each other. Like that's been the biggest core tenet in every single community I've had the privilege of being part of and being able to get back into and support. And so when I see people and I meet founders of high conviction, whether they're in United or Catholic or Buddhist or wherever they kind of prescribe faith to, seeing somebody that's able to kind of lean on something bigger than themselves, find meaning and support and comfort in something that is bigger than them, it helps provide a bit of a North Star when everything is crazy. And there have been way too many instances in my life where just kind of belief that if you show up and present in a positive way and are consistent, the universe kind of conspires to create incredible opportunities for you. And there is no way that is just pure personal grit, determination, and energy. And so it becomes very challenging to believe that there's not bigger forces at play making connections happen when you show up to random events and there's 20,000 people in a room and you bump into the one person at the right time that's going to unlock the next thing for you, or bump into somebody on public transit that you then strike up a conversation with and changes the trajectory of your life or where things are going. And so moments like that, I think, are incredibly foundational for me in believing that there is a bigger player out there. There's a bigger force in the universe.
Right. Yeah, I love that perspective, having a foundation in a value system. Like, pick your value system, and it can be prescriptive, especially as a young kid who needs that
Absolutely.
structure, right? Needs that predictability, needs that basic foundation of comprehension. But then, to your point, as you get older, you get more experience, you start to integrate those values into your life today. And I particularly grew up Baptist. My father come
Uh-huh.
from German Catholic roots, like Catholic potato farmers in Maria San, Ohio for like 7 generations. And then
That's
my
amazing.
mom was a Protestant immigrant from South Korea in the Korean Presbyterian church. So yeah, coming from a Buddhist background, actually, her parents were of Buddhist faith. So yeah, today I believe in
That's
one
awesome.
true living God, but I also create space for people who are maybe polytheistic, especially in Hindu faiths and more Eastern traditions. So AI and Faith is an organization that I particularly volunteer for. And it's an
Oh, cool.
organization that brings the world's wisdom and religion to the AI ethics conversation, not as a bolt on duct tape solution after, but as a core tenet and a foundation to AI and faith and all technology, really. So, quick shout out to AI and Faith if that's something that you're interested in being a part of. We're continually looking for experts and community members to further that conversation. And I like the pluralistic nature of it because it says no matter what religion or faith you believe in, even we have atheists and agnostics in our community, we get to have the conversation together. And Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft and head of legal, even said, he quoted, and I don't want to misquote him, but essentially paraphrasing, we invite the religions of the world to the table of technology ethics and ethical positivity. So I heard you say ethical positive companies. It's the
Yeah.
first time I've really heard that phrase. I really like that phrase. Maybe we can put that on screen. Ethical positive company. What does that mean to you? And for an angel who's looking, or for a venture fund who's looking to invest into an ethical positive company, how do I identify that type of a company in the ecosystem today?
Yeah. So that's a great question. It's something for me that's been kind of a core philosophy. I'm sure lots of folks in my own ecosystem will chuckle a little bit because I think I have a bit of a reputation for being kind of pure capitalist on a lot of things. But for me, ethically positive means that if this company achieves everything they set out to achieve, do they make the world a better place? If we follow this mission and vision to the end result and they become dominant in the product they're building, are people better served for it? And for me, there can be multiple interpretations of that. That doesn't just have to be, if they succeed, do they save children around the world or save the planet? A good example of that is, like, I pay a lot of attention in the fintech space, and I fundamentally believe that better financial tools and better financial literacy for companies and better access to finance data. We've got one company we're involved in called Pluvo, and their whole mission is to make forecasting and planning more accessible to founders and companies and make it more conversational. And for me, better access to information and better run companies creates better opportunities, creates more jobs, creates less instability in the world and ecosystem. And so from that perspective, when companies are focused on how do we make people's worlds, lives, day-to-day operations better, smoother, does it create a net positive impact? Similarly, like, a lot of my focus on the gaming space is like, how do you harness gaming as a community and then use that to surface positive topics? Like, our first game on Facebook, Green Space, was essentially a green energy, clean tech, nature conservation version of Farmville. So it's like, if you're going to go restore a planet,
what a blast.
Right? So, like, we built a whole game where it's like the theme was you have to clean up and recycle all the junk on this planet to restore nature, and wildlife comes back, and you bring in solar panels and hydro, and then nature comes back, and we partner with like nonprofits. And the whole philosophy there is like, take the power of gaming and community and this ecosystem where people want to interact and want to share stuff on their feed and want to do all this stuff, but tie in a subtle theme of like moving the future forward, moving towards positive causes, and doing a little bit of education without being completely on the nose, obnoxious about it, but just like, instead, if you need energy for your city, here are your three options: wind, hydro, solar. And so, like, for me, those are two probably opposite ends of the spectrum on the theme of like ethically positive. Is like, how do you take a medium that is interesting and sustainable and weave in something that is going to help make the world a little bit better if you achieve all the goals that you're going after? And so I don't play in like the gambling space or the spaces where it's like addiction and dominating people's world without being able to redirect some positive impact. That's not my world.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. And nowadays, especially with the younger generations coming up, and some people would say we are the younger generation. Some people would say we have even more youth. We care about sustainability, right? We care about being ethically responsible for our planet and for our children's and our children's planets, right? And one thing that I appreciated about taking whatever 6 weeks to stop the spread, or taking that intentional rest period, is that we finally got to breathe again. And there was an aspect of a revived faith and sustainability. So, all right, moving on to our next topic of future tech, quantum tech and definable moats. What do you mean by moat, and what is quantum?
So this is an interesting one. So quantum, I think, is very buzzy right now in terms of the future of quantum computing, and it is the next generational leap of computational technology, and it's something that companies have been chasing forever. I think it's currently kind of overshadowed by the AI narrative that is becoming dominant. There's a whole sector of companies in quantum security, because quantum computing operates at just fundamentally a different level than modern computing does today. And so if and when quantum computing becomes a practical reality, it reinvents so much of what we know about encryption and data storage and security and speed. And so it's very, very interesting, but very theoretical still. There's a lot of companies preparing for it. There's a lot of companies talking about it. And I actually think it's a field that gets potentially advanced a lot faster the more dominant AI becomes and the more advanced AI modeling and research becomes. I think that we're going to see those two industries move very quickly in parallel. And now, defensible moats, kind of tangential to the quantum side, but I think defensible moats is very much what can companies do that helps give protection as they grow. And for me, this is a topic that is evolving rapidly. 10 years ago, your moat was largely product, IP, depth of the software, and stickiness of the software that you'd created. And I think we're seeing the traditional moats rapidly disappear as the cost of development and cost of execution is driven down by AI. Like, you can build software today faster, better than we have ever been able to build it before. So just having a product is not the moat. However, and a heavy part of my thesis right now is, as AI allows product development to get faster, as AI increases the volume and the noise on social media and marketing, as AI gets better at fine-tuning sales, cold messaging, marketing, ads, all of those things, the moat starts to become your users and your community. Because as much as everything else gets faster, humans still only have the same 24 hours in a day that they had 20 years ago. And there's still only the same amount of capacity for attention and change as there has ever been. And now there is higher volume and more competition for that. So I think this is why you're seeing so many personal brands evolve and such an emphasis on community. It's part of why we're building community, because community, trust, and reach become your moat. They become one of the most defensible aspects of your company and your ecosystem. A really good friend of mine called this out to me 2 years ago, which kind of kicked off my own journey of getting into the personal branding space. And that was Dan Martell saying, pushing back on me to start a personal brand. I was like, I don't need one. I build the company brands. I was like, and he's like, okay, cool. 4 companies in. How are you benefiting from the brand of the first company today? And I was like, well, we sold it. It's gone. It's like, cool. Wouldn't it be great if you had a brand that grew every time you built a company and made the next company easier and had an ecosystem of people that support and grow with you throughout all of the companies? So I was like, oh, I get it. Yeah, we've had millions of users in past companies.
Right.
None of that helps do the next thing. And he's like, today, this was 2 years ago. He's like, I'm one of the smaller kind of business players in my ecosystem, but I have billionaire friends reaching out to me to help them promote causes and charities and different things because I have reach now. And it's like,
right,
this applies to every part of your world. And so that's true on personal brands and companies. So like, your moat is your community and the trust and the ecosystem you build around it.
Right.
Because that's very hard to take away.
Yeah, I love that. I heard you say community, trust, and reach is part of that moat that you build around your individual self, but then also quantum technology as that definable moat to help protect not only your personal brand, but also your business. So shout out to Dan Martell. We say period. This is our little clap. And we just say thank you to Dan Martell over in Kelowna, Canada, and Jeremy Pogue. Those guys, really great, awesome little Canadians.
Awesome.
Canadians know each other, which is awesome. So as we talk about community and building that trust and that reach, first of all, I'm so grateful that you're here as a guest on this show, and specifically on a live show where we can interact with the audience. We've had over 100 people already just on this live show. Either tune in real quickly or leave a comment. So thank you for doing that. Now you're building your own community of over 1,000 founders that you want to raise to 1 million plus in net worth and beyond. Tell us really that philosophy as to why you've been doing that for the past 2 years. Why are you so passionate about building a founders and investors community yourself?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. FounderLink came about as a result of us hosting founder dinners, which was a way to connect founders with each other to share stories. Founded on kind of two core principles for the dinners, which was no sales and no politics. And those were started because I got so frustrated attending founder events and being one of 5 founders surrounded by 40 bankers, lawyers, insurance brokers, and realtors, and going, where did the founder communities go? And how do you actually connect with and talk to other people on this journey? And at the same time, seeing the value and benefiting from some incredible founder communities, but all of them came with a $10,000, $20,000 a year price tag to be part of. And it's like, well, that's amazing. But people earlier on in their journey don't necessarily have access to that. And a lot of folks later stage in their journey aren't going to pay it because they don't need it anymore. And so FounderLink was created kind of as a way to connect people that had attended the dinners and as a way to create free community that I wish I'd had before. That was kind of a curated, safe space for founders to connect, share stories, ask questions, learn from each other. And as it started to evolve and got to 500 members, then 1,000 members, I got a lot of the questions like, what's the goal here? And what do you want to do? And that was something I was really searching with in terms of what I wanted to achieve long term and where we were going with our work at Iversoft and what the kind of journey had been for a lot of our portfolio companies. And I started to reflect on like, what do I want my impact to be? And that's where we came up with the idea of like 1,000 founders to $1 million in revenue would be the equivalent of creating our own kind of unicorn community. So rather than building one company to $1 billion, if we help 1,000 founders get to their first million, we've created $1 billion of economic activity and impacted thousands of families. So that became kind of my North Star.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that so much. And I don't want to cut you off, but we do have an awesome anchor segment coming. It's so important to elevate other people and especially the accessibility. As a man who is considered, part minority as a Korean, I enjoy elevating and giving access to all of the immigrants, all of the light-skinned people, all of the brown people, all the people of color, if you will. I consider myself a person of color. And so that accessibility in Founders Link is incredible and with a very specific and measurable outcome. It's similar to our organization that I want to shout out very briefly, which is 111X. And 111X is an organization, a business marketplace ministry connected to my friends and family at Destiny Church in Coachella, California, and Long Beach. An organization with 3 different campuses plus online, making it 4, raising up 111 millionaires inside the ecosystem of the faith church in California and beyond. And so this is our first year as an organization, and our goal is within the next 20 years to build that up so that we can be more generous and annually give $111,111 every year as founders to organizations, of course, churches and faith organizations, synagogues, mosques, etc., temples, but also nonprofits that already exist doing really great work. And also, we had a previous guest who helped nonprofits with financing because nonprofits are just really getting reamed with 40% interest rates sometimes. So we are building an organization of generous individuals and humans. So maybe we can collaborate on 111X, AI and Faith, and Founders Link because I can see some real big momentum there. So for people who are interested in Founders Link, how do people get connected to Founders Link and join the organization? And I don't know, maybe be one of the $1 billion in annual recurring revenue.
Yeah. Easiest way is go to founderlink.com and apply to join. It's free and open. We have a team that kind of vets all the applicants to make sure you're building a company and kind of willing to abide by the kind of 2 core rules, which is no politics and no sales. There's opportunities inside the community to kind of promote what you're doing, but ultimately the goal is connect with other founders and learn from each other as you're growing. It's a big world and there's a lot of obstacles to overcome. And so the more you can kind of create community and feedback from those around you, I think the more sustainable the journey becomes.
Yeah, I love that. What did they say? At the dinner table, don't talk about politics, sex, or money. And similarly in community, don't show up trying to sell something or talk about politics because you'll quickly be admin banned for life. No, I'm just kidding. But
100%.
no, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but no, I love that. It brings the human component back. And
Yeah.
in the one-on-one, if you want to talk about more private topics, absolutely,
Oh,
that's fine. But in the community, it's like just show up as your authentic self. You don't need
yeah.
to impress anyone. You're already an awesome human being. You're already enough. Absolutely love that mantra. And I'm excited about Founders Link myself. I'm going to apply as well. And if you want to apply as well,
Excited
just
to
go to
have you there.
founderlink.com. And who knows, I probably won't even make it in. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, okay, our final segment, our anchor segment as we bring this show to a close. By the way, if you're listening, please go watch this on all major platforms for Beyond the Bag and the David Daily Show with a focus on funding, faith, and future tech on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick. That's a mouthful, but that's just the first 8 platforms. So we have a special segment called Beyond the Bag. It's an anchor segment to our show. Every show, we ask our guest, what is one item in your bag that you cannot travel without? And so today, Graeme has put together an item from his bag. It's a total surprise to me. I will do the same. But Graeme, beyond the
Sir.
bag, what do you travel with?
So I'm not gonna show it, and you'll see why. But it is something that I have traveled with for over 10 years now. And keep a photo of my daughter on my phone at all times. That's a new theme. However, and this is going to be both pragmatic, but also has a deeper meaning for me. And that is, I travel with a prepaid Visa with an amount of money on it that, from my perspective, can help me always get home. And I do that, one, for pragmatic, practical reasons for myself, but two, because it serves as a reminder. There was a lot of times early on in my companies where I had absolutely no money. And I know there were a few times I was trying to attend meetings in different cities, and like I did not have money for parking or to stay at a hotel, or people used to make fun of me because I would always like pre-buy the parking or go to the meter. I would never pay on my way driving out of a parking garage because I never knew which card was going to be declined or not, and I didn't want to deal with that while I was sitting in the car. And so for over a decade, I've had a prepaid kind of emergency card with me as a reminder that if everything goes away, I have the resource and the ability to get home and find a way through it, and to try and remember, no matter what we achieve and where we get, that there was a time where $5,000 would have changed my entire life. And it's easy to lose perspective on how meaningful certain amounts of money are or can be, and how stressful it is to live with that stress and fear. And so, like, for me, it's a little bit practical, but it's largely symbolic of trying to remember the time that I came up through that and use that as kind of a core grounding as I
Yeah.
travel. That it's a link to home, and wherever I am in the world, I can always find a way out. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, I love that. I absolutely love that. Essentially, you travel with a prepaid emergency fund and a photo of your beautiful family, your daughter, which
Yeah.
is your prized possession. I mean, that's why we live. And so I really appreciate that, especially because I myself am in that stage where, yeah, I'm ex Microsoft, made good money. I'm also been in a place where I've had nothing, literally nothing to my name. And on both spectrums, you learn to appreciate the finer things in life. Right now I am traveling and currently actually in Granada, Nicaragua, on the lake, and going through Central
Amazing.
America. And one reason
Thank you
why
for
I'm
joining.
traveling is because my runway multiplies by 4 while I am here, and I get to find good Wi-Fi and travel. And I'm building a website, whereisdavid.org, because everyone's always wondering where is David. But yeah, I
I love
really
it.
like the sentimental aspect of that, whether it's, $2 in your pocket. I have a lucky $2 bill. It reminds me of the generosity of my mother and always having provision there. Sometimes I travel with 1,000 Awana bucks. I'm not sure if you have heard of Awana, but there's a small
No.
niche audience that have heard of Awana. It's a youth program for kids on Wednesdays, kind of with a faith and athletics
Oh, cool.
perspective. But that the 1,000 Awana bucks shows me what 100 grand looks like in cash if you were to have $1,100 bills. So it's a visualization technique. So whether you
Cool.
have 5 cents in your pocket or you have $500 million in your bank account, it's good to have a perspective on that. So it's been wonderful. I'll do very quickly. I'm doing something different every time. I carry a pack of bicycle cards. It's a travel
Oh,
set. I just learned a new game called Briscola, which is an Italian game on the bus yesterday. Really fun game. If you haven't played
cool.
Briscola, you gotta learn it. And I lost terribly to this Italian who just whooped the living, anyways. And it was a fun game, but you never know when you'll need a deck of cards. Everyone
Yeah.
knows it's an international symbol of fun and play, and we absolutely love that on the show here. So, all right, in closing, LinkedIn, of course, but what is really the best way for individuals to get connected with you? Where are you most active? And again, remind us, who are those people that you help serve? And
Yeah.
what do you do in that company? And who are the types of people that you really enjoy connecting with?
Yeah. So best way to connect is through my site at graemebarlow.com. If you are scaling a company and building an AI team, our work at Iversoft is probably some of the best in the world for building and recruiting the top talent on earth to build emerging tech teams. If you're a founder looking to grow, whether you're growing to your first million, 10 million, or 100 million, we're building a free community to support all of that at founderlink.com. And if you're somewhere in the middle or just looking to connect and ask questions, LinkedIn or Instagram, Graeme Barlow on all the platforms, and happy to chat with people. Love connecting with people. I am very lucky that a lot of my role and time today gets to be spent building community and connecting with founders across the board.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate that, Graham. It's been a true pleasure to have you on the show today. You are an incredible human being. I love your perspective on ethical, positive companies and grit and storytelling. Learn grit, learn storytelling, do what it takes, and someday you'll get to the place that you want to be. And so I love that. So, guys, thank you so much for
Thank you,
tuning
David.
in. Really appreciate you, Graham, on the show. We're going to jump in here real quick on the outro. But I just wanted to say, if you're tuning in and you've been listening or commenting, or you're watching this afterwards, please smash the subscribe button and give us a positive review. We would love a nice 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, every major platform. And if you want to be going live or have your own podcast, I would love to help build that with you so that you too can build a personal brand that lasts. Whether you are just starting your business or you have exited multiple 7 or 8-figure exits like Graham and many of our guests, we would love to partner with you and support your own personal content creation journey. And on that, we're going to sign off. See you on the next show.